Jai Śrīla Prabhupāda, Jai the Sankirtan movement, all glories to the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We want to welcome everyone worldwide to today's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class. And before we begin the class, I'm going to read something from Prabhupada's Pastimes in Swami in a Strange Land by Joshua M. Green Yogeshwar for your information. It's in regards to the publication of the Bhagavatam back in the 60s, the one that we'll be reading from today. So here, when the printing and binding was done, 1,100 copies of the 400-page book sat in stacks. So this is the book that we're reading from, this one here. That one there. I used to have the original copies, but unfortunately they found another home, and I managed to get a set from my friend Madhuha, who runs the Festival of India, a few years back, and I very, very relished them. I very much relish reading them. The total cost was 7,000 rupees. Swami made an agreement with Sharma to take 100 copies at a time and sell them and pay off the balance. So Prabhupada would go to the printing house and pick up 100 copies, sell them, and then pay the money and progressively go forward like that. Remember, he was on his own completely. Setting out from his residence at Radha Damodar Temple in Vrindavan, he traveled each week to Delhi and presented copies to statesmen and scholars requesting that they write endorsements. Hanuman Prasad Podar wrote a review, so did the Adyar Library Bulletin, which noted that the Swami's vast and deep study of the subject was very great. Fellow disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta offered favor. Oh, you got it? Favorable comments, as did the government of the governor of Uttar Pradesh and India's Vice President Zakir Hussain. With these reviews in hand, the Swami convinced libraries and universities to purchase copies for their collections. The Ministry of Education bought 50 copies. The U.S. Embassy purchased 18. He deposited the money and returned to his room in Vrindavan to continue writing. It took him more than a year, but by January 1964, he had saved enough money to print the second volume of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Like the first volume, the second was 400 pages long, bound in heavy cardboard and covered with brick-colored cloth. One Delhi bookstore, Manohar Lal Jain, founder of the Munsila Manohar bookstore chain, was happy to see the Swami return with a new book. Jain had sold more than 150 copies of Volume 1, and he expected to sell as many of Volume 2. Courteous words, a few books sold as well and good, but he was still in India. The money from these few sales was negligible, and his mission lay ahead, abroad. He was 68 years old. Time had run out. Let's see. Through contacts in Delhi, the Swami secured a meeting with Sri Radhakrishnan. A letter of recommendation from India's new president would certainly expedite his visa for America. During his tenure as Spalding Professor of Religion and Ethics at Oxford University, Radhakrishna had been inspired by the teachings of 80th century scholar Shankar, whose Advaita Vedanta philosophy defined Krishna as a temporary manifestation of a higher impersonal truth. The Swami knew Radha Krishna was a Shankarite neo-Vedantist with little sympathy for Krishna worship. But he did not mince words on arriving at the president's office. So Prabhupada was very ambitious. I've been ordered to preach in the foreign countries, he said, and I need your help. What will be the result of preaching in foreign countries? Radha Krishna replied skeptically. Religion was not high on his list of exports. Bhaktivedanta took the offensive, critiquing Radha Krishna for not implementing religious policies. You may be president of India, but what are you doing for the nation's benefit? There are so many criminals, yet you are failing to reform them. You should be like Narada and Valmiki, he said, referring to the Vaishnava sage, Narada Muni, who had reformed a murderer by convincing him to chant the names of Krishna. My advice is that you begin yourself hearing the teachings of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhaktivedanta said, and then teach the public that chanting will cure their materialistic disease. If the impoverished Swami was bold enough to challenge India's president on his record of social reform, Radha Krishna was enough of a sport to issue a challenge in return. He proposed that the Swami teach Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in a local prison. If, after some time, his efforts had any positive effect on prisoners, Radha Krishna would provide a letter of recommendation. He arranged for the Swami to teach Tuesdays and Thursdays each week in a Delhi correctional facility, and after 2 months, prison officials deemed the experiment a success. I'm glad to see that my lectures have brought some changes in the mind of the young offenders. Bhaktivedanta wrote to one of the guards, "The means which I have adopted is spiritual, and it works more quickly than any material means." Radha Krishna kept his word, and Bhaktivedanta had his letter of recommendation for a visa to go to America. So we'll carry on now with our chant of Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari and begin the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion with Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Sai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavavrinda ki jai, Nāma-Acārya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giridham ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Swami Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Swami Bhaktivedanta ki jai. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Tato Jayam Mudirayet. One should utter the means of conquest, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, 1, to the personality of Godhead Narayana, 2, to the Narayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, 3, to the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then 4, to Śrīla Vyasadeva, the author. This is from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 4. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we see in the first canto, chapter 2, text number 17, 1 to 17. Srinvatam Svakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Ridyantasto Yabadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is also the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, does cleanse the desire for material enjoyment in the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge for hearing his messages, Krishna's messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class or rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is inauspicious in the heart of a candidate becomes destroyed almost to nil, and thus loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, comes into being an irrevocable fact. So this reading of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, reading and discussion, we are reading from the original Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the original 1962 New Delhi edition. Today we'll be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 1, text number 22, page 122. All synonyms, translation, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Svamna sandarshitu datra dushtaram nishtitir shatam kalim sattvaharam pumsam
Prabhu, it's a
Karanadhara
different verse.
Ivarnavam
It's a different verse.
Svam.
It's a different verse, Prabhu. Vinkat?
Okay, which verse?
We're on chapter 2 now. The first text of
Okay.
chapter 2.
Canto 1, chapter 2, text number 1. Iti samprashna samrishtu vipranam brahmaharshanihi pratipudya vachaste sham prabhaktum upachakrame iti. Thus, samprasna, perfect inquiries, samrishtu, perfectly satisfied, vipranam, of the sages there, Romaharshini, the son of Romaharshana, namely Ugrashrava, Pratipujya, after thanking them, Vachas, words, Tesham, there, Pravaktum, to reply them, Upachakrame, attempted. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Thus, the son of Romaharshana of the name Ugrashrava, being fully satisfied on the perfect questionnaires of the Brahmins there, he attempted to reply them one by one and thank them for their words. Purport by His Divine Grace. The sages of the Naimisharanya asked from Sutta Goswami 6 questions, and he is answering them one by one. Sutta uvacha yam pravrajantamanupeta krityam dvepayana virakatara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravo vinidus tvam sarvabhuta hridayam munimananatosmi. Sutta Goswami Uvacha said, Yam, whom, Pravrajantam, while going for renounced order of life, Anupetam, without being reformed by sacred tread, Apeta, non-ceremonized, Krityam, prescribed duties, Dvepayana, Vyasadeva, Viraha, separation, Katara, being afraid of, Ajuhaba, exclaimed, Putreti, O my son, Tanmayataya, being absorbed in that way, Taravo, all the trees, Aviniduhu, responded, Tvam, unto him, Sarva, all, Hridayam, heart, Munim, sage, Anatosmi, offer obeisances. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Śrīla Sutta Goswami said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the great sage who can enter everyone's heart and who was addressed as my son by his father Vyasadeva while he was going away for renounced order of life without being reformed by sacred tread or undergoing the ceremonies observed by the higher caste. The trees absorbed in that way responded to the fearful father, feeling the separation of the son. Purport by His Divine Grace. The institution of Varna and Ashram prescribes many regulative duties for observation by the followers. In such prescribed duties, it is enjoined that a candidate willing to study the Vedas must approach a bona fide spiritual master and request him, the master, for accepting him, the candidate, as his disciple, and thus reform him by the sacred tread. The sacred tread is the sign of those who are competent to study the Vedas from the Acharya, or the bona fide spiritual master. Sri Śukadeva Goswami did not undergo any such purificatory ceremonies because from his very birth, he was a liberated soul, and there was no need for him to undergo such reformatory process. It is taken for granted that a man is born as an ordinary being and by the purificatory processes is born for the second time. In other words, when he sees a new light of spiritual progress of life and approaches a spiritual master for study of the Vedas, the spiritual master accepts only sincere inquirer as his disciple and gives him, the disciple, the sacred thread. By this process, a man becomes twice born or a Dvija. After being qualified as Dvija, one may study the Vedas, and after passing the examination in Vedas, one becomes a Vipra. A Vipra, or a qualified Brahmin, thus realizes the absolute and makes further progress in life for spiritual advancement, and thus becomes a Vaishnava. The Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate study of a Brahmin. A Brahmin must be necessarily a Vaishnava, which means a self-realized learned Brahmin. Śrīla Śukadeva Gosvāmī was a Vaishnava from the beginning, and therefore there was no necessity for him for undergoing all the processes of the Varnashram institution. Ultimately, the aim of Varnashram Dharma is to turn a crude man to become a pure devotee of the Lord or a Vaishnava. Anyone, therefore, who becomes a Vaishnava accepted by the first-class Vaishnava or Uttam Adhikari Vaishnava is already a Brahmin, never mind in whatsoever family he might have taken his birth by the influence of his past deed. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted this principle, and he recognized Srila Haridas Thakur as the Acharya of the holy name, although Thakur Haridas appeared himself in the family of a Mohammedan. The conclusion is, therefore, that Srila Śukadeva Goswami was a born Vaishnava, and therefore Brahmanism was included in him, even though he did not undergo any one of these ceremonies prescribed by the institution of Varnashram Dharma. And a low-born fellow, may he be a Kirata, Hun, Andhra, Pulinda, Pukasha, Abhira, Sumbha, Yavana, Kasadaya, or even lower than them, can be delivered to the highest transcendental position by the mercy of Vaishnavas. Srila Śukadeva Goswami was the instructor, spiritual master of Sri Sutta Goswami, and therefore he offers his respectful obeisances unto him before he begins his speeches on the questionnaires of the sages of Atnaimisharanya. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham. I offer my respectful obeisances. We offer our respectful obeisances unto Śrīla Prabhupāda, our spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, who has opened our eyes from the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirdishesha Shwanyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham. Bhagavad Vandanam Kadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadatihi Visheshataham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam, Shri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha, Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here we see we are starting the second chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, titled by Śrīla Prabhupāda, Divinity and Devotional Service. So we see here that Romaharshana Sutta, the son of Romaharshana Sutta, Ugrashrava, was very satisfied, very happy with the various questions of the sages of Naimisharanya. And he is attempting to reply to these questions. Prabhupada mentions there are 6 questions that were asked in that first chapter. In this second text, we see that Sutta Goswami is basically addressing the great sage, Vyasadeva, in basically praising him for his exalted position. Prabhupada goes here to an elaborate explanation of the different qualifications of Brahmins, Vipras, and Vaishnavas. Now, this is a very important point because we see, even in India, in Vedic culture, where Vedic culture was used to be very prominent, there are still some individuals in various parties who preach and proclaim that you can only become a Brahmana or Brahmin by birth. That if you are born as a Shudra or a Yavana or Mlecha or any lower, or Chandala for that matter, dog eater, you cannot become a Brahmana in this same body. They claim that you have to take another birth as a Brahmana in India, and then you can be a Brahmana. This is the essence of caste Brahmanism and Smarta Brahmanism. Of course, in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, according to the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we do not accept this false conclusion, this false premise. The Bhagavad Gita describes Chaturvaranyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, that the system of Varnashram, the original divisions of human society, in 4 specific, we don't use the word caste, but 4 specific divisions of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and 4 ashramans of Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, that this system was established by Krishna himself. And it is based on guna and karma, not on janma, not on jati. Janma means birth. But this misunderstanding is very prominent due to false pride and the influence of Kali Yuga. We see in the commentaries of the great Acharyas and Śrīla Prabhupāda's commentary how the great Acharyas do not support this false premise of Brahmin by birth. This may have been in the previous age, in Dwapara Yuga, where things were very different. But in Kali Yuga, Kalo Shudra Sambhavaha, Jayante Janmani Shudraha, that in this age, everyone is born a Shudra. Samskarat Bhavet Dvijaha, one becomes a Dvija or twice born or a Brahmin to the proper samskara or reformatory ceremonies. We see Sanatan Goswami and Gopal Bhatta Goswami in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was quoted by Śrīla Prabhupada many times, Yatha Kanchanatam Kamsyam, that is this particular verse described, just like one can turn bell metal into gold by a special chemical process, similarly, one can become a Brahmana by the proper process of samskara or reformatory ceremonies. In our movement, Śrīla Prabhupada introduced the process of following the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no eggs, no onions, no garlic, no chives, no illicit sex, no gambling, no mental speculation. These principles are basically designed to bring a person, to reform a person's mentality and consciousness, to bring him to the proper level. That and the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Śrīla Prabhupāda often quoted a verse from the Vishnu Purana, Namno hi yabati shaktihi papa nirharane harehe tavat kartum nashaknoti patakam pataki naraha. This verse was also quoted by Ananda Tirtha Madhvacharya in one of his books. And the essence of that verse is that the name of Krishna or Vishnu is so powerful that can destroy the karma or the bad karma, the papa karma, the sinful activities from millions of births. And a person cannot commit enough sinful activities that one name of Krishna, one name of Vishnu can purify. Unfortunately, the caste Brahmins and the smarta Brahmins, due to being misled by the influence of Kali Yuga, they do not accept that. But we see in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, we accept the authority of Hari Bhakti Vilas and the great Acharyas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they fought very bravely to establish this point that anybody from any part of the world can become a bona fide Vaishnava simply by chanting the name of Krishna. This is very important. This is a very important point, excuse me, because we see, due to the influence of Kali Yuga, that some persons, although they may be educated in Sanskrit and they may chant Vedic hymns, they may follow certain Vedic principles, but because they have not heard from an authorized bona fide Acharya, they are misled by the influence of Kali Yuga. Prabhupada used to often quote the verse, Ata Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Grayamindriyayi Sevan Mukhehi Jivado Swayameva Spuratyadaha, that one cannot understand Krishna, his name, his activities, his qualities, his pastimes, with these blunt material senses. Nabhaved grayam indriya. Indriya means the senses. Then how do we understand? Sevan mukhehi jivhado. Jivha means the tongue. The tongue has two basic functions, to taste and to vibrate. So these two basic functions can become purified. One can become purified by engaging the tongue in chanting the name of Krishna, hearing Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and engaging only in tasting foodstuff offered to Krishna in the proper authorized way by the Acharya. Now, this is a very important point. Somebody may say, okay, if we do that, what's the benefit? What will happen? Atasa Krishna namadi nabhaved griyamindriyai sevan mukhehi jivado swayameva spuratyadaha. That Krishna will reveal himself by this process. This is from the Padma Purana. Now, this is an important point because we see here in this text that Prabhupada is giving the example of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family, in a Mohammedan family. But yet, he was such an exalted saint, an exalted transcendentalist, that even Advaita Acharya recognized him in a great assembly of Brahmanas by giving him the first offering at a Shraddha ceremony. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself declared him the Namacharya, or the authority, the supreme authority in our Sampradaya with regards to chanting the holy name, Namacharya Haridas Thakur. Everyone has heard the amazing story of Haridas Thakur, how he was beaten 21 times in marketplace in Navadvip. The Mohammedan ruler was very upset that he had taken to the practice of the Hindus, as they called it, and that Haridas Thakur would not renounce this practice. So they beat him 21 times, and he still would not die. They tried to kill him, because if a man gets hit with these whips for 21 times in 21 marketplaces, it's likely that he would not survive. So out of compassion for the keepers, we told him, if we report to the Qazi, to the Mohammedan ruler, and tell him that you are not dead, he will kill us. And then Haridas Thakur, no problem. He jumped into the Ganges as an example of compassion for them. Haridas Thakur was very exalted soul. We all heard that he was chanting names of Krishna 300,000 times a day. That's almost like chanting 22 hours a day. No one can imitate Haridas Thakur. This is not recommended for anyone to imitate Haridas Thakur, but he gave the example of how to conduct oneself in a pure and transcendental way. And we know from the life of Haridas Thakur that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, when he departed his body in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Mahaprabhu took his body and washed his body in the ocean in Jagannath Puri and performed the Samadhi ceremonies for him. Anyone who has visited Jagannath Puri in India knows the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur is still there, the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put his body. But in those days, the caste Brahmins had a lot of influence. They still do. In Jagannath Puri, they will not allow white-bodied devotees that they consider Mlecha and Yavadas to enter the temple. Even Prabhupada tried to request the authorities to allow his devotees to come in. They would not allow. Very troublesome situation. During the lifetime of Haridas Thakur, the caste Brahmins would not allow him to come into the temple. Same for Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, because they had been involved with the ruler of Bengal, Nawab Hussain Shah. They felt that they were Muslims and they would not allow them to come into the temple. So this Haridas Thakur was living close to the Jagannath Puri temple, and every day he would worship and pay his obeisances to the chakra, the Sudarshan chakra on top of the Jagannath Puri temple. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to visit him, such an exalted personality. So this is the power of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the power of his teachings, the power of the Samkirtan, the deliverance of the holy name, of the sacred names of Krishna in disciplic succession. We all have heard from the Chaitanya Charitamrita and from Śrīla Prabhupāda the power of the chanting. We have often discussed how Prabhupada used to often recite that verse from the Brihad Naradiya Purana, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevala. That in this age of Kali, this is the only means of deliverance. Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatiranyata. There is no other means of deliverance than chanting the name of Hari, chanting the name of God. Prabhupada was very liberal. He even mentioned several times, if you are chanting other names, like Allah or Adonai or Yahweh or whatever name you have, you can keep doing that. But just observe the proper principles of Bhagavad Dharma. These principles of no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no mental speculation, no intoxication. The problem we have in Kali Yuga, these activities are everywhere. Everywhere these activities are present. It is a very contaminated age. We see at the end of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in the 12th canto, how Śukadeva Gosvāmī is discussing with Maharaj Parikshit about the conclusion of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And he described that in this age of Kali, Kaler dosha nide rajan nastiye ko mahan gunaha. Dosha nide, it is in this Kali Yuga, this current age of quarrel and hypocrisy, this age is doshanide. It is an ocean of faults. It is an ocean of troubles. Everywhere you go, there is difficulty, there's conflict, there's stress. Prabhupada often would translate the words Kali Yuga at the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the age of conflict. We see this all over the world. On the slightest provocation, there is problems. There is conflict, there is discord, there is war, there is fighting. Very difficult age. So how to solve that problem? But there is one great quality. What is that? Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Rajet. That simply by chanting once the name of Krishna, one can immediately become liberated from all the problems. The difficulty is people will not take to the process. But if one is fortunate to come in contact with a pure devotee like Śrīla Prabhupāda and his bona fide teachings, unrevised, non-adulterated teachings, then one can get that relief from material existence. Why do we keep saying this point about bona fide, non-adulterated teachings? Because we have seen in the last 45, 46 years, since the disappearance of Śrīla Prabhupada, that his teachings have been adulterated and interpreted in various ways which are not according to his original intent. We have often discussed this point. This group is often using a term that Prabhupada is available through his Vani incarnation. Vani means teaching, original teachings. Now we have a situation that some neophytes who think themselves very advanced are preaching that their Vapu is more important and should take prominence over Prabhupada's Vani. And they have the audacity and the temerity to change and adulterate his original teachings and original books. Very dangerous situation. We see so many people are misled by these false propagandas. There are many posers and pretenders in Kali Yuga. Very dangerous situation. People should be aware. People should be very, very careful. I'm going to take the liberty of reading a little bit from a lecture from Śrīla Prabhupāda on this same text of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 1. This was in New Vrindavan on September 1, 1972. September 1, 1972 in New Vrindavan, USA. This was a Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam lecture, Prabhupada. Iti samprasna samrishtu vipranam rumaharshanihi pratipujya vachaste sham pravaktum upachakrame. These are Sanskrit verses. I know most of you are not conversant with this language, but the significance is that simply by vibration, children crying aside, they should leave. Prajimna, people who have young children, perhaps they could take them away when the lecture is going on so they don't make noise and disturb people from hearing. Prabhupada, so simply by vibration, the atmosphere will be cleansed and purified. Just like when there is thundering sound in the sky, it does not require to understand by any particular language. That very vibration and the origin of creation is sound. The grosser elements are visible, but the creation takes place from finer elements. The sound is the symptom of the sky. By sound, we can understand that there is sky, ether. Then by sound vibration, there is circulation of air. And you've got practical experience. When there is very loud sound vibration, sometimes there is very strong wind also. So by sound vibration, the wind is started. And by strong wind, electricity is produced. From electricity, water is produced, perspiration. and from water earth is produced. So sound is the original element of creation. In Sanskrit language, it is called Shabda Brahma. Brahman, or the absolute truth, is first appear. Absolute truth becomes knowable by sound. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, the Lord says, Rasoham Matsu Kanteya Prabhasmi Shasu Suryayoho. Shabda Ke. Shabda means sound. If we want to see God, let us hear first of all the sound vibration, because that is the beginning. In the Bible also it is said, the Lord said, let there be creation, and there was creation. So let there be creation. This is sound, transcendental sound. So one who says this word, let there be creation, is not within the creation, because he, God, is speaking. Let there be creation means is existing before creation. So God is not within the creation. In the Vedic literature, therefore, description of God's body is given as Satchidananda Vigraha. Vigraha means form. Satchidananda Vigraha. Ishvaraha Parama Krishnaha. Satchidananda Vigraha is not formless. He's got his form, but it is a different form. How can we understand? Because we've got experience of this material world. We cannot see anything subtle. Gross things we can see. Therefore, we can understand by our thoughts what kind of form God has got. Satchidananda Vigraha. Sat means eternal. Chit means knowledge. And Ananda means blissful. So if we compare with our body, then we can understand what is Satchidananda Vigraha. Sat means eternal. So if we compare with our body, this body is not eternal. It is destructible. It has got a history. It is produced at a certain period. It exists for a certain period. It grows. It gives some byproducts. Then it becomes older and older and then vanquished. No more. That is our practical experience. We know. But God's body is eternal. Therefore, he hasn't got a body like this. This body is not eternal. Everyone can understand, but his body is eternal. Another symptom, Sat Chit. Chit means knowledge. So we've got also knowledge, but not full knowledge. That has been described in the beginning of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What is the nature of God? Nature of God is described, Janmadyasya Yataha. Nature of God means he's the supreme source of everything. Whatever. Janmadyasya, Janma Adi. Adi means beginning with Janma. Just like I've already described my body, your body has a history of Janma or birth, a date of birth. So Janma Adi means birth and sustenance and death. We've got this body produced or born at a certain date. It keeps sustained for a certain period, say 50 years, 60 years, or 100 years at most, and then again it is destroyed. Therefore, Janma Adi means birth. It is also coming from him, maintained also by him, and when it is destroyed, it goes unto him. This is called Janma Adi, means birth, maintenance, and annihilation. Janmadyasya. All this material world, they're undergoing the same process. Janma, sustenance, and end. Everything. This universe also is like that. Everything, even the ant's body or my body, your body, elephant's body, or there are many demigods' body. Just like we have learned from Bhagavad Gita, Brahma's body. It keeps from millions and millions of years. One day we cannot calculate. So there are different types of bodies within this material world we can compare. Just like ant's body, a fly's body, and my body. A fly's body may remain for a few years or a few hours. So our body may remain for a few years. And similarly, there are other living entities like Brahma. Their body remains for a few decades. But everybody, each body is subjected to this law of nature. Birth, death, disease, and old age. So God's body is not like that. It is eternal. Here in this material world, we can possess a body which may exist for millions of years, but that does not mean it is eternal. It is not eternal, but God's body is eternal. Therefore, in the Vedic language, when it is said nirakara, nirakara means one who has no form. It does not mean that God has no form. He's got form, but his form is different from this form upon which you have got experience. Our experience is whatever form we can think of, even Brahma's form, that is liable to be annihilated. But God's form is not like that. So when in the Vedic language it is said nirakara, means near means not, and akara means form. That means God's form is not like ours. It is not that he has no form. He has form, but his form is different than ours. In knowledge, now knowledge, so far our knowledge is concerned, it is very limited. We do not know. We can have some experience of our present knowledge, but we do not know what was in the past and what is going to happen in the future. Present also, our knowledge is imperfect, just like we are seeing the sun planet. But what is our experience? The sun is bigger than this planet, 1,400,000 times bigger. 1,400,000 pieces of this earthly planet can be thrown into the sun planet. It is so big. Unless it is so big, how is it possible the sun planet is distributing heat and light for millions and millions of years? And although it is situated 90 million miles, devotee, 93. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on describing the fundamental principles of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and the wonderful explanation of His Divine Grace. Again, this is from a book called Collected Lectures on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which was published by the Bhaktivedanta Archives. I don't know if it's still available. Most of the lectures are available online. One can pick up any Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam verse, the canto, the verse, the chapter, and locate. Hare Krishna. Vishwakarma Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you very much, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, for your discussion on this particular purport of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and further in the discussion on Haridas Thakur from the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, 6th chapter, text 44. Although in the purport, although Haridas Thakur happened to take his birth in a Muslim family, he was elevated to the post of Namacharya by Lord Chaitanya due to his rigidly attended principle of chanting 300,000 holy names of the Lord daily. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Because he chanted the holy name of the Lord constantly, it is understood that in his previous life, he must have passed through all the ritualistic methods of the Vedas known as Shabda Brahma. Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord Hare Krishna. Haridas Thakur is known as Namacharya, but it is he who preached the glories of chanting Harinam, the holy name of God, by using the words Tomara avatar, your incarnation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms that Haridas Thakur is the incarnation of Lord Brahma. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says that advanced devotees help the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his mission, and that such devotees or personal associates incarnate by the will of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord incarnates by his own will, and by his will, competent devotees also incarnate to help him in his mission. Haridas Thakur is thus the incarnation of Lord Brahma, and other devotees are likewise incarnations who help in the prosecution of the Lord's mission. So this pastime of Haridas Thakur gives us deep insight into what is the qualification of a devotee. A devotee is qualified by the example they set according to the directions of the spiritual master. Yad yad acharyati shreshta tat tad eva taro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, text 21. Translation: whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Just quickly here, we'll read the purport, of course. Haridas Thakur set the standard of chanting the holy name for everyone else's benefit because of this principle that when you see a great man doing these things, then you want to follow them. And in this way, the leader can teach people by example. This is more important than precept, because precept, everyone is pointing, do this, do that, do this, do that. But they have no potency because they don't practice themselves. So practice of Krishna consciousness, according to the directions of our spiritual master, will give us some realization from the jnana platform to vijnanam, where you understand because you're actually applying yourself to the principles, not hypocrisy. The hypocrite, they preach, but they don't practice. This is not good. Purport by Śrīla Prabhupāda. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly even before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya, or the ideal leader. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Scripture to reach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or executive head of a state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility by their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Now, this issue of Prabhupada preaching to the Western people was a very big issue in terms of how the Gaudiya Math perceived him, because some people believed that preaching to the Western people who were of low birth, kalo shudra sambhava, disqualified him as a preacher of the mission of Lord Chaitanya. But here in this particular purport, Prabhupada is explaining about Haridas Thakur being of low birth. And despite his low birth, by his example, he was able to inspire all people in the process of Krishna consciousness. It is by example that one can become great, not by precept. So in one situation, we were in Jagannath Puri, myself and a friend, Nandi Keshwar Prabhu from Montreal. And it was, we frequently went to Jagannath Puri. We would go to Mayapur to be with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would give the lectures every day in the Mayapur temple. And then he would make his way to Vrindavan. So the festival would start in Mayapur. So we'd attend all the lectures for the week. And then Prabhupada would make his way to Calcutta and then make his way to Vrindavan, which would be the second section of the festival. So in that break, Nandi and I, we had about 15 devotees with us between both temples. So we would go to Jagannath Puri, and stay there for a few days just to get a chance to experience the wonderful darshan of the different holy places that are in Jagannath Puri. And we went ahead and if you've been to Jagannath Puri, the temple is on the, it comes down from the long pathway there, and there's two, it sort of gets to a finishing point. Now across the street was a stage, like a platform kind of thing, steps, and you could be there. And then and then across the way was the Garuda Stamba, and then the Jagannath Temple. Very grand place. And I can remember we would go there, we would chant by the Garuda Stamba, but we were not allowed to enter the temple of Jagannath. This was back in 1974. So as a result, we decided to run a program across the way, because they wouldn't let us in because we were white-bodied. So total discrimination against us because of birth. Even though we were following our guru's instructions, even though we were chanting the holy name, still, according to their position there, we weren't allowed in. So what we did was we set up there in India, you can get a PA system. You just hire a guy. Back then, I know India must be different now. Vinkat, I haven't been to India since 1983, I think. So I know it's changed quite a bit. But back then it was still a very simple society. So we hired a guy to bring a PA system, on the bicycles. So the guy had a bicycle PA system, and he drove it up to the temple, the platform beside the Jagannath temple, and he set it up for us. And Nandi was a very good kirtan leader, and myself, I had some experience. So we had our 15 devotees, and then we took some money and we bought some prasadam. And then we decided, okay, we'll do our own program. Even though we're white, even though we're from the West, and we've been rejected by these people, we thought, does that really matter? No. We're back in our temples in Canada. We have Lord Jagannath, and Lord Jagannath is with us. So we went ahead and we staged a protest against we staged a protest against the Jagannath Brahmins. And we had a big kirtan. We chanted for a few hours. And then in between the kirtans, they're gathered about 4,000 or 5,000 people. And they came out and we distributed the prasadam, and we just chanted for the glory of Lord Jagannath. And the next day there was an article in the paper, the Orissa Times. I wish I still had a copy of it, that we staged this protest and we also preached. I remember I got up, I said, we do not care if we get in this temple because Lord Jagannath is the Lord of the universe. And people that discriminate against devotees because of skin color, this is not the way Lord Jagannath wanted the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya to be propagated. So it is by example that one should take up without any fear of reprisal by anyone, the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. Not because we are born in a white body, but because we are the servants of the pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. This is the example that Haridas Thakur gave us. Very amazing, being beaten in the marketplaces. I know I've been in jail a few times for preaching the Sankirtan mission. We had 62 charges against us in Toronto by the Toronto Police Department. We defied them all. We have no fear, everyone, of being representatives of Lord Chaitanya's mission and the mission of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, because by chanting the holy names, by following the principles that he's given us, by studying his books, we can stand up as representatives, ambassadors of the Supreme Lord through the mercy of Śrīla Prabhupāda and defy all opposition. This is a war against Maya, period. Yaśodā-nandana, please, if you could comment.
And we had a similar incident in Vrindavan in 1974 when the entire town of Vrindavan wanted to recognize Śrīla Prabhupada for his accomplishments of preaching the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all around the world. And what happened, and there was an incident where one of the caste Goswamis in Vrindavan started to make some agitation against Śrīla Prabhupada because of an article that had appeared in Back to Godhead, where Prabhupada had criticized some of the caste Brahmins and the smarta Brahmins, and he said that those who commit sinful activities in the holy Dham, in the sacred place of Vrindavan, would be born as monkeys and dogs and turtles. And this one individual was highly agitated. And basically what he did is he organized counter-propaganda against Śrīla Prabhupada. And what happened is Śrīla Prabhupada was very strong on this point, and he kept preaching for many days to everybody who came in his room that this movement is not a sectarian movement. We are not caste Brahmins. We do not promote caste Brahmanism, and that anybody can be a bona fide follower of Lord Chaitanya. And this mentality that people are living with wife and children and engaging in questionable activities somewhere out are Goswamis, it's complete nonsense. Prabhupada then said, he told one of the other Goswamis in Vrindavan, who was very friendly and favorable to Śrīla Prabhupada, that I will take this person to court and show in court that the definition of Goswami, according to Rupada Goswami in Upadeshamrita, that these people don't live up to that standard. I'll bring 1,000 devotees from all around the world in front of his house day and night. We will go to court And finally, the person desisted on his envious mentality. And what is remarkable about this is Prabhupada just would not let up on this point. He was so strong, morning, noon, and night, preaching to everybody in this room, that this idea that only those who are born in India can be Brahmanas, that only those born in India can be Vaishnavas, this is complete nonsense. This is not supported by Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. This is not supported by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very important point. This was quite a unique experience, very important experience.
Yes, very, very important for everyone to understand that. I'd like to ask Gosvāmī Das, who is in Mayapur right now, to make a comment further on this topic. Gosvāmī, please. Your microphone, please, sir. Prabhu.
My respectful obeisances to everyone. I have no words at the moment. Really.
That's
Sorry.
fine. That's okay. Don't worry. We're very happy that you're joining us from Sridham Mayapur. We both, myself and Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, have very fond memories of being in the Dham with Śrīla Prabhupāda for many, many years and hearing him speak. So when I see your face there and know that you're there, it brings me closer to the Dham and the wonderful pastimes that we enjoyed with our Guru. Bhakta, our godbrother, Jiva Goswami, could you make a comment, please, on the morning class?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. I was observing the Ratha Yatra festival there in Jagannath Puri online, and I was wondering, could you give us an experience of what it was like to see the carts being pulled?
Yaśodā-nandana, please.
It was quite an amazing experience. There is nothing like this anywhere on the planet, because it is such an amazing festival to see Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath is very big. It takes like 10 to 12 people to lift him. Very heavy, very big, very effulgent. And they bring him up from the temple onto the carts, and those carts are huge. They're very, very big. It takes months to build those carts. And all the pandas, or the local devotees of Lord Jagannath, they bring Lord Jagannath, Lord Balaram, and Subhadra into these big carts. But what is absolutely amazing is the crowd. There's like over 1 million or 1.5 million people that assemble for this festival. I mean, we have no such experience in the West. I mean, in the West, they have sporting events, and they'll have some rock and roll concerts where they have these big venues. But there's nothing like 1 million people assembling for a festival like this. And Lord Jagannath is being brought along. It's a unique experience. And what is amazing is how Prabhupada brought that festival to the Western countries. I mean, I had an experience in 1971 when I went with a devotee in Calcutta to Jagannath Puri. We tried to get in the temple and they blocked us. And they told us, well, the only person who can allow you is the Puri Shankaracharya, who is a Mayavadi sannyasi, who basically doesn't believe that Westerners can be Brahmins. So the local pandas follow this person. But the experience, when we brought this story to Śrīla Prabhupada, Prabhupada's statement is, why are you worried? Because Lord Jagannath has come to your country. He's available now. Lord Jagannath has come, you can serve him there. But Prabhupada was not pleased at the disrespect that these pandas showed to his disciples. Now, of course, I'm not much of a disciple, but the mentality of refusing to allow devotees into the temple, Prabhupada was not pleased with that. But the amazing experience of seeing the Ratha Yatra is quite amazing. There's also another festival called the Snan Yatra. Snan Yatra is a festival where they bathe Lord Jagannath, and you can actually rent a place on top of a house very close to the place where they do this. They don't parade Lord Jagannath. It's an all-day festival where they have these amazing ceremonies. They put Lord Jagannath with new clothing, with new flower garlands, and they bring him all kinds of preparations. And we had a very, very good view of this festival. And this went on for 6, 8, 10 hours. It was just absolutely amazing to see that. You can actually buy like a ticket, and they allow you to go on the roof and you can see the festival. Very, very special. Very, very. I went there with a devotee who is now in Alatra named Dhruva Maharaj and a couple of other devotees. It was a very unique, very special experience. That and visiting the place where Haridas Thakur used to be, visited Gambhira, the room where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to chant, the place of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the place of Haridas Thakur, the Samadhi of Bhaktivedanta. There's so many sacred places. There's a place in Jagannath Puri, a temple called Tota Gopinath. This is a temple where the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they say this is the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed his body. And if you give him a little donation, of course, they will show you a silver lining in the thigh of the Krishna deity. And they say this is the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merged with the deity of Lord Krishna. But Jagannath Puri is such an amazing place. Amazing place. Ratha Yatra, Snan Yatra. There's so many wonderful festivals. We hope that someday the local pundits can reverse their decision and try to allow other people. So there's other people in India, like other places, in a few places in India where they don't allow Westerners. Somebody made a comment named Somagiri, who is on this call. What is that comment you were making, Prabhu? Somagiri? Bhakta Somagiri?
Hare Krishna,
No?
I was answering, is it possible nowadays to go to the Jagannath temple or not? Not. Somebody was asking.
If you have white skin, you're Westerners, they will not allow you in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But one thing is that Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu was mentioning all these other spots. So there is no restriction there. So you can go, when we went to, again, things have changed in India, but every morning we would chant our rounds in the room of Haridas Thakur, which is down by the ocean. And then one of my favorite spots was to go to the room of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And I had pictures, but someone stole them from me, of his view looking at the Jagannath temple. And then also going to the deity of Tota Gopinath, where we would go constantly to the deity of Tota Gopinath. I can remember you take a little rickshaw, you walk through the woods, and there was a small little temple there. Like I said, I'm sure it's changed now, but back then it was just a small temple, and you go there. It's a little building, and then you give a donation, and you could see where Lord Chaitanya left in the knee of the deity. So our hope as a Prabhupada Disciples Association is that we can conduct a tour someday with our group in the future, like we did so many times in the past, and go together and be at these places together and weep in ecstasy with kirtan and realization of how real the Krishna conscious philosophy that Prabhupada delivered to us is, and how relevant it is even till today by the grace of His Divine Grace, Śrīla Prabhupāda. Bala Ganesh Prabhu in northern India, you have a question.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So can I go ahead, Prabhu?
Please,
yes,
by all
go ahead.
means.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. So please accept my humble obeisances. So my question is, So Lord Jagannath is like it's a manifestation of the spiritual world, the Jagannath Puri, and even the pure devotees like Śrīla Prabhupāda also have recommended and tried to convince the convince the pandas over there. And I do had a very not so pleasing experience with the pandas there, especially the Hare Krishna devotees. Okay, so not sure whether they are not so welcome there. But my doubt is like Prabhu, so since Lord Jagannath is personally staying there, but his personal servitors, why they were influenced by the Mayavadi head like Shankaracharya, and he had made many derogatory comments against the principles of Hare Krishna movement and ISKCON there, and he always comments on our values and principles. The Shankaracharya of Puri, the Puri Shankaracharya. And they were also, as Prabhu told, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu told, they are highly under the influence of him. So how can all these Kali Yuga things happen personally in the abode of Lord Jagannath just before him? And what does Lord trying to teach there?
Prabhu, there's always going to be two sides to the story in life. One side is in a positive mood and the other is in a negative mood. So this is going on just because it is in the Dham. It doesn't mean there won't be people there that will try to criticize the devotees of the Lord. And this is due to Maya, seeing others from the bodily concept of life and not understanding Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadasa. We're not the body, but we are the eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Remember, this material world is an illusion. It is a big illusion. And most people, they live on the mental platform. They have no understanding of the transcendental nature of the living entity placed in this body by the grace of the Lord. So,
Prabhu, but it has no jurisdiction in a place like Puri, right, Prabhu?
this goes on. Like you look in Mayapur, even today in Vrindavan, all these different dhammas, there's always going to be some kind of difficulty for the devotees. But for the transcendentalist, they do not see that. They see Krishna in everything. And so it's up to you or the devotees when we go there to remain on the transcendental position by constantly taking shelter of the holy name in the process of devotional service. Vishwajit, Prabhu, I see your hands up. Where are you from?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat pranam, all Gosvāmī and Vaishnavas.
Where are you from? Where are you from?
Prabhu, I'm from Prabhu. Originally, my birthplace is Vrindavan, Brajmandala. But right now I'm Russia. But right now I'm in Russia, USSR.
In Russia, okay. Haribol.
Haribol. My question is that in Brajmandala I chant easily. But when I come in Russia, difficulties come. But right now everything is normal. So my question is that why the difficulties come in Russia in Harinam Kirtana? I coming in association with the devotees, and I am also to Sankirtana, and we are also distribute prasadam, and we are also distribute Bhagavad Gita in Russian language, and and we are also try to spare Krishna's holy name everywhere. So my question is that why the difficulties coming in the foreign countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan? Why?
Okay, Yaśodā-nandana, do you follow the question?
I could not understand his question very well. Maybe you could rephrase it for me if you could.
Yeah, I will. The Prabhu here, who's in Russia, he's originally from Vrindavan, and he's now in Russia, and he's working with some group there to try to spread the Sankirtan movement. But he said there's a lot of difficulties there now. Why is it there are so many difficulties in preaching Krishna consciousness now in Russia?
Well,
Yaśodā.
I guess there is a lot of events there. I think some of this is due to the fact that the way that Krishna consciousness was introduced in Russia by Śrīla Prabhupada. Prabhupada went to Russia first in the early 1970s with two of his servants, and he initiated one devotee, Ananta Shantidas, and this devotee was the first devotee that was preaching in Russia. And as Russia basically allowed or was forced to allow various religious group and religious movement, the movement took a foothold there. What happened there is after Prabhupada's disappearance in Russia, they basically introduced this unauthorized guru system. Rather than follow the guru system that Prabhupada prescribed in 1977, they invented this self-appointed guru system and this voted guru system. As a result, there's a lot of confused devotees there who do not understand Prabhupada's instruction, unfortunately. And what has happened is the political situation with the situation in Ukraine has complicated the situation because the government has tried to draft many young men to go to war in Ukraine for whatever reason, whatever political situation is there. So this has caused some social upheaval, and it's temporary. This will not last forever, regardless of the outcome of that conflict. But it's important to note that it's not just with Russia. There's a lot of places around the world where there was conflict when we first preached. I gave the example in a previous class. In 1970, Coranda in Los Angeles sent 3 devotees to Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't know if everybody on this call knows, Salt Lake City is the capital of the Mormons. So we went there, and within 10 minutes of chanting, they were arrested by the police and put in jail with no explanation. They just put us in jail. So we had one phone call. We called Coranda, and Coranda called the mayor of the city. He says, why are you arresting these devotees? What have they done wrong? They're chanting the name of God. And of course, the mayor didn't have anything to say. But this is the example that sometimes there are some religious fanatics, close-minded people. All over the world, this is there. It's not just in Russia. Even in this country, in America, although it was liberal enough to allow Prabhupada to preach, it was liberal allow both in Canada and United States to give the movement its initial start, but still there's a lot of bigoted people. And that fact is there all over the world. Now with Russia, it's especially complicated because of the proliferation of this problem, this self-appointed guru problem, and these appointed guru problems who are preaching philosophies which are not in line with Śrīla Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. I hope it helps.
Thank you, Prabhu, from Russia.
Prabhu,
we're just
spare Krishna name is Hari Bol. You are audible. I am audible, Prabhu. Prabhu, there is some difference between Russia and the US. That first of all, the language barrier, and second is that we cannot find a vegetarian food easily in this region. So, Prabhu, what we can do for
Prabhu, just what you have to do is try to pray to Krishna to give you some insight how to handle these problems. Like Yaśodā said, we all have suffered under the persecution of different governments going down through the ages. And by the way, just before we end, we're coming to the end of the class because we are under a time restraint, but I did have a chance to deal with Ananda Shanti and speak to him on many occasions, the original first disciple of Prabhupada. And you must recall that during his period, because of things that were done by our God brothers, they put him in jail and strapped him to a table and injected him with all kinds of drugs. So this kind of persecution may happen, but we have to be fearless, just like Haridas Thakur was, and we must march on without any hesitation to spread the Sankirtan movement. And, you know, please be in touch with us. You can call us at any time, and we can discuss with you privately on how you might be able to continue your wonderful work in taking up the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. Vinkat, could you give us a final comment, please? Bhaktivedanta.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your guidance, Prabhu. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Bhaktivedanta, please.
Don't really have anything to add. I can't think of anything right now, but thank you very much for the excellent lecture. I learned a lot, so thank you.
Thank you, Bhaktivedanta, and we want to thank everyone for attending the class today and being a part of the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. And we want to encourage you to please invite your friends, people that want to become inspired by the readings of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Chaitanya Charitamrita from the unadulterated books of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. And we encourage you to carry on with the mission, chanting and hearing constantly about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the mission of Śrīla Prabhupāda to continue to spread it worldwide by his causeless mercy. Vinkat Prabhu, could you please bring forward this original kirtan, by the way, everyone, is a kirtan that had no mridanga, and Prabhupada's playing with bongos. This is an early 60s kirtan where he's chanting Hare Krishna with all his initial dancing white elephants. That's what he called his disciples. He called us the dancing white elephants. So we'll talk about that in future classes, and we'll continue on with this process of sharing association in the community of devotees worldwide. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Hari, Hari Bol.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We want to offer our respectful obeisances to all the assembled devotees here at this class. Thank you very much. Please accept our humble obeisances. Vancha Kalpa.
Sarvabhyascha kripa sindhubhyo Sharanam pavanabhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prakrita.
Hare Krishna, Hari Bolo, Hari Bolo. Buon giorno.